Yeah, I think when you're a kid, you grow up and you realize, oh, I want to be Zeppelin. I want to be the Beatles. I want to be, I want to have that kind of thing. But ever since I've been 18, I've been a professional musician. I haven't had to work a real job in my life.
And as soon as I saw it, I realized, oh my God, this is the oldest Ouija board I've ever seen come out of the UK.
One click on the web, you can have access to this music, that's great. But the fact that it means less because we are not sharing it with a shared community, that's a loss.
There used to be this guy called the Unknown Critic. And at the end, after the credits of a movie on a rental, he would do he would just tape on right onto the videotape his review of that film.
Welcome to this week's episode of Starfish and Coffee. My name is Sean Smith, and this week's guest is Paul Manzi, who is I was going to say current lead singer of Sweet, but there's no end in sight, is there?
Well, no, I don't think so.
That'll do then. Okay. Who is the lead singer of The Sweet, or Sweet, if you're being picky? Saying Sweet sounds weird, doesn't it?
Well, if you know the history, it used to be the Sweet Shop back in the 60s. And I'm so glad it's not the Sweet Shop because, I wouldn't really like that, really.
Just sounds wrong, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
But that's got to be what? That's what? Late 60s?
Yeah, I've been around 67, 68, I think.
Anyway, let's talk about you first.
Cool.
What's your background? Because I know from what I can gather, you're a multi-instrumentalist. Well, I know you play guitar and keyboards, so you're a multi-instrumentalist in my book.
Well, I'm a guitarist. Originally, I was a guitarist, and that's all really I wanted to be when I left school. As things happen and you fall into bands and they say, listen, we haven't got a singer. Any chance you can do the singing as well? And that ended up taking over. And, from the guitar sort of went less and less, and my singing obviously got more and more. And I got known as a singer rather than a guitarist. As for keyboards, well, I tinker around. I'm not really classically trained or anything, but most of my keyboard training really was when I depped for Sweet when I first met them in 2014 to do the Australian tour with them. And I've had to frantically learn all these parts in about 3 weeks. Literally, like 6 hours a day, I was doing it, trying to get that muscle memory and, because I'm not obviously a natural pianist. So I can tinker around a bit with a few things.
So rewinding, I think you're maybe 3 years older than me, so that puts you leaving school in about 80, 81?
Yeah, more or less. Let me see, 73, 83. Yes. No, you're right, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like the rest of us, you just joined the band with your mates.
I did. I was in a school band, actually. My first ever band was at school. And we were really into the German rock bands like Accept and Scorpions and bands like that. And we called ourselves Bochum after the German city. And I remember we never actually did a gig, but we did rehearse. And we did start writing one song. Funnily enough, it was called Bochum City.
Nice.
And so I don't really want to recall the lyrics, really. It was pretty amateur, really, at the time. But
that's all right. I think the first song I ever wrote with my band was called Chains.
Okay, well, that's not a bad title.
It's pretty awful. Dear Lord, let's leave those days behind. So, at some point there must have been a proper band, though, or what you thought was a proper band, at least.
Yeah, I think I would say my first band where I started going out playing and doing shows was sort of thinking of it seriously was in I would say probably a prog rock style band called Barchetta. And I met this guy.
That's a fancy name.
I know. Well, very Rush influence, funnily enough, like Red Barchetta.
Fair.
And the guitarist Pete Still was actually the accountant at EMI Studios at Abbey Road.
Handy.
So that was really handy because we got to rehearse there every Sunday. So can you imagine the kudos of, going and rehearsing on a Sunday, coming out, and all these Japanese tourists taking loads of photographs of us like we were famous, It was great. I tell you what, I dated a lot of girls in that time, I must admit. But,
All Japanese.
But that was my first, in fact, that was my first opportunity to be a lead singer. And the guitarist said, it's best if you put the guitar down and actually just concentrate on the singing. And I didn't really want to do that because at the time, I felt naked without the guitar and I didn't really have the confidence to be a frontman then, but I was pushed to do it and probably was a good idea because obviously I learned so much of the craft.
It's a weird feeling, isn't it? Although you are on the 38th floor and I am and always was on the second floor, it's a weird feeling being naked. You've got drums to hide behind, a guitar, and all you have is this, inch diameter mic stand?
Absolutely.
If you're lucky.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's nothing between you and anyone else. It's a strange feeling at first.
I think it's probably the most difficult thing to change from one to the other is being a musician and then being a lead singer without an instrument. That's probably one of the most difficult things you can do. But I mean, now, obviously, I actually love doing it. I love being a front man because I'm free to move around the stage the way I want and interact with the audience where you can't really do that the same with an instrument, hanging around you. And I think I embrace it now, and I actually love it. I enjoy it. It's the buzz now,
Did you?
A long time, but
takes as long as it takes, right?
Exactly.
I mean, how did you ever? Was there a point where you thought, "Okay, I'm pretty good at this"? Did you ever have lessons, or did you just go for it?
No. When I was with Barchetta, I wasn't happy with the way I sang at all. When I listened to recordings back, I couldn't listen to it. It was terrible. I hated it. I went and had 6 lessons with an operatic professor called Sir Bernard de Marco.
I bet that was fun.
Actually based in Chiswick. And the reason I did that was I looked at all the singers and I remember reading something that Freddie Mercury had some operatic training. And I thought, well, he seems to do pretty well. So I think maybe I'll give that a go and see if that can help me. And of course, the exercises and everything that I learned from there was absolutely invaluable. And I just practiced, every day, always trying to improve what I could do, everything really. And again, it's taken a long time because over the years, your voice changes anyway. And I think I can do things now, and my range is probably the highest it's ever been, than even in my 20s, which seems bizarre, but sometimes that's how your voice develops, Do
you think that's just working the muscle continually?
Absolutely. And the muscle develops over years and years. And then you try new things and you're pushed again by different bands that I've joined, pushed to do things where I didn't think was possible. And somehow your muscles and between your mind, I suppose, and body, you work out how to do something and do it well. It takes time. You go through lots of, occasions where you go, oh, that's terrible. I can't do it like that. That's terrible.
But you also have those moments where you go, I don't know where that came from.
Oh, yeah, I know. Absolutely.
And I can't repeat it either.
Absolutely, yeah. No, definitely. I mean, those are nice moments, but maybe that's what being human is all about, really.
I guess, yeah. So
some good ones.
At some point, you then joined, I can't do the math in my head, you then joined Cats in Space.
I did, yeah. I mean, I joined them in, I actually have this now. I get all my years mixed up sometimes.
Got to be
2016, I think.
Okay.
I think we did our first show in 2016, was it, or 2017? It might have been January 2017. But yeah.
Well, let me backtrack a bit. 2016. So between Barchetta and Cats, you were presumably in and out of other things.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've missed, obviously, some things out. In 2005, I got together with Rick Wakeman's eldest son, Oliver, and went and was singer for his band, the Oliver Wakeman Band. for a few years.
I did not know that, which is why I left it out.
You see. And from that, actually, when he got asked to join Yes, because Rick didn't want to do it, he was off touring with Yes. And I was sort of dormant really for a while with nothing really to do. And I got approached by Clive Nolan, which is the keyboard player and co-founder of Arena, prog rock band Arena, to join them. And I thought, well, you know what? That sounds like a good idea. Let's do it. And I ended up joining Arena, and I did 3 albums with them. And I stayed with Arena actually right up until 2019, actually. So I've sort of been with Arena for a long time, but that was in 2011. And obviously Cats in Space was 2017. During that time, I don't know if you remember, I said I depped for the Suite. It's the first time I actually got in contact with them.
Yep.
2014 in an Australian tour. So from that, every now and again, I get called up and I go out and do a Suite show in Germany or something. When Pete Lincoln at the time, who was lead singer, maybe had a problem with his voice, couldn't do it, something like this. Or Tony O'Hora, who was doing the keys, guitar and keyboards and third part harmonies, maybe couldn't do it. But I would always go in as keyboard, guitar and third part harmonies for that, never as lead singer. It was either Pete or Tony at that time that would do that. I was just going to help them out.
Yeah.
So if you can imagine, I was sort of doing that. I was with Arena. I joined Cats in Space. So you sort of think, I'm pretty busy. But, you know, Arena didn't really do a lot. They do a tour maybe once a year and the odd gig here and there. So that wasn't very busy. Cats were really trying to get things going, get the momentum going. And obviously I did a couple of tours with Cats as well. And obviously a couple of albums. Yeah. And then, you're talking Cats in Space. Did you want to talk about more of that? Or?
I was trying to get around to, actually, I was trying to avoid talking about Sweet at all because it's such a huge section that I was going to stick at the end. But with Cats, but when you came on my radar, what a weird band. In that it is one of the very few bands that you can't pigeonhole. I hate pigeonholes, but when you're having a chat, you're kind of like, what are they like? And you're like, well, they're a little bit proggy, but they're quite pop orientated as well. And I think that's quite a purposeful thing. It's quite tough to be in a prog band and go somewhere mainstream, I would think. But it seemed like a conscious decision to go, let's liven this up a bit. Let's not, go on forever and ever and ever with mega solos and just compact it. It seemed like does that make sense? A compact prog. That's a new genre.
And you are right. It's very difficult to pigeonhole Cats in Space. It does cross over a few genres. And obviously, influenced by, funnily enough, Sweet, Cheap Trick, etc. And you can hear those influences in the music.
Very much.
And, I got called up from Greg Hart from my contact details have been given to him by an old school friend, actually. And he initially called me up, actually, and said, would you be interested in coming and helping us out with my Supersonic 70s show that we do? And he sort of told me what we do. We do the set, we do, it's all about the 70s. But it was pretty much, a bit of Mud, a bit of, T-Rex, a little bit of this and that. And I said, yeah, I suppose I could do that, no problem. And he said, but there's also something else I wanted to talk to you about. I'm thinking of starting an originals band. And I said, right. And he said, I've got a couple of songs, so I could play you a couple of songs. We haven't got a name yet. And I said, all right, okay. So anyway, he's sent me a couple of sort of ideas and songs and that. And I sort of listened to it and I thought, okay, well, this is a bit different maybe to what I've done. And again, I didn't really categorize it when I listened to it. I said, well, do you know what? I like the melodies. I'm very happy to give it a go, definitely. And that's what happened. I ended up joining. And then the name Cats in Space came in. And that was that. Then it was writing for the first album, working towards the first show. I mean, to be honest with you, I loved it. I loved the songs. Of course, I loved the guys. Yeah, it was really, it was almost like taking me back to the 70s or partly some of the 80s, but with a modern twist on it. And at that time, Greg was writing with Mick Wilson, who had been working with 10cc. And, well, he's just done loads of things.
Yeah, that's big guns.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's a great songwriter in his own right. So, of course, Greg and Mick writing songs were just like producing, songs at a quite fast rate. And they were sounding good. And it still had a bit of rock in it, to be honest with you, Sean. And I think that's what I liked. And I sort of, because I'm a rock man, really, in my soul. That's the way I was brought up, listening to all the rock bands. But I've got such a diverse musical interest that I like everything. So you give me something that's melodic with a bit of rock in there and a bit of pop and a bit of prog. I think, well, I've got sort of lots of elements of what I listen to anyway, and I like. And I think that was the thing with Cats in Space. And I was attracted definitely by the songs. And things could have been different, of course, if I was still with them. But, you have to make choices in life sometimes when opportunities come up.
They're still together, right?
Oh, absolutely. No,
You're still buddies?
Well. Absolutely, yeah. Every now and again, in fact, funnily enough, I spoke to Dean Howard, the guitarist from Cats, today. We stay in contact. In fact, we've been doing a little bit of writing as well together. And every now and again, Greg and I will speak, and I keep promising to go down and have a beer with him if I can get down to Horsham, but
all those miles away.
Yeah. Well,
I know how that is.
So it's a bit of a trek for me.
No, it was a good band.
Absolutely. Producing great music. And now they've got Damien Edwards. Fantastic voice, fantastic range, does the job, really. They've got the sound, they got the songs. So, good luck to them.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's one thing doing what you do now, but it's a whole other kettle of fish trying to get somewhere from scratch. I mean, I came across a video, and God help me, by a band called the Black Spiders last night, who I had never heard of before in my life.
Yeah.
And when I looked deeper, it's like, geez, this video is from 2012 and they're still got like 10 years. How do things, because you no longer have, rock radio is not a thing, is it? The rock show is fractured to hell and back, and you don't have that fine channel of Kerrang, as it were.
Yeah.
Delivering, and you can say a lot of things about that mag, but we were clued in week after week.
Absolutely. Those mags.
And now you're left to your own devices.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a shame that obviously this is what happens with technology. Obviously the internet, of course, being the biggest influence in changing everything in the 90s. But all those mags, I remember all of those. I remember looking at adverts through NME and Sounds and Melody Maker.
Yeah.
And that's
thing required.
Yes, exactly.
And you'd go, that's the thing for me. Influences, Mick Ronson, Bowie, Ziggy, you're on the phone, right?
Exactly. That was the way it worked. And
where are you based? We're in Oswestry. And you're like, okay, I could get the bus.
Exactly. But then, of course, what's always been as well as that is word of mouth. And I actually sort of think word of mouth is probably actually even more influenced now by where you get to now, because there are so many musicians and so many bands around now.
And everybody's so freaking good.
It's very difficult to advertise, especially if you're a named act.
Yeah.
And most named act would normally sort of go through the who knows who and who's recommended, probably, rather than just putting a standard ad out, like the old days.
And then comes Sweet.
Yes. Exactly. Well, obviously, as you know, I mean, I depped with them from 2014, so I did know them. And I knew, obviously, what I could do. And, 2019 it was. a depth for them, and we did a show in Tel Aviv, of all places, which was actually a bit of a funny time because there was a little bit of conflict going on.
Yeah, what's that? Tel Aviv is Israel, right?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And we were warned that it's a little bit dodgy at the moment when you go over. They said, and there are some rockets coming over, so you've got to listen out for the air raid sounds. And, of course, it put us all a little bit on edge. We were doing a double show with Slade. So we basically, we were all out there at the airport, flying out there together. And we did, we did the shows. We were out there for a few days, but just for one show. And I remember actually Dave Hill actually saying to me, he said, I don't know if we should play Merry Christmas over here. Do you think it's right? And I said, well, it's such a big hit. Do you think it would matter? He said, yeah, but the rockets and everything. I said, don't worry about it, Dave. Don't worry, mate. The rockets won't hit you. Of course, they did. They did. But the reason I bring that up doing Tel Aviv is in the airport on the way back, Andy took me aside and basically said...
give you a good beating.
Yeah. Don't ever do that again. No. Basically, sort of said, listen, things are changing at the moment with Sweet. Pete Lincoln has got other commitments and he's going to have to put other commitments first. And so I was basically going to ask you, would you be interested in joining Sweet permanently? We know what you can do. We'd love you to join. I'll leave you to think about it. And that's what he told me at the airport. So, of course, so for a few days, I was sort of had to just sit and think about everything. I was in Cats in Space. I was with Arena. Obviously, there were proposed shows and tours that wanted to happen. But of course, what was to happen next, no one could ever predict. The pandemic.
Sorted everything out for you.
Yeah, a pandemic. But of course, I had to make a decision before I knew the pandemic was going to happen.
Yeah.
And I had a long chat with Greg, and he said, look, I don't think it's not going to work for both because we need to book tours and we're doing this and that. And you know what? For me, at the end of the day, I thought, look, of course, I love Cats in Space. I love the songs. I love what he's doing. I love the way he's doing it. But I grew up, with a lot of bands that made me want to be a musician. And one of those bands was Sweet. And I thought, you know what? I think I've just got to go with being in a band that made me want to do what I do. And I chose, obviously, to be in Sweet. And unfortunately had to make that decision. Obviously, I couldn't be in both. And then, of course, the pandemic hit and no one was doing anything.
So what did you do during the pandemic? Wrote a lot?
So wrote a lot. Lee Small, who's bass player in Sweet, he and I get on very well. We're like brothers, to be honest with you. And we have similar interests in our writing sort of things. Yeah, so we've done a bit of writing together. And I did a few online shows with Lee.
So you did?
So we did a few of those where we called ourselves Rockefellers. We also did a little three-piece, which included my wife, Minky, called Three Spirits. I've done an online show in the pandemic with, again, my wife, with the Marinellos, just the two of us. Just trying to keep busy, trying to perform and trying to do things, obviously, rather than just sit around not knowing what to do. And that was good because it gave us purpose and obviously just kept us going, really. And then actually I think it was 2020, I actually had to send an email to Clive and Mick Pointer from Arena, basically to say, look, I don't think I can do this tour you're proposing to do. I think it was at the end of 2020. I didn't think it was going to happen anyway. And basically, we just made that agreement, really, that they'll look for someone who has the commitment. Again, because I was going to be committed to shows with Sweet. Obviously, with Sweet, there's not really massive chunks of not doing anything. So very difficult to have the time off, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So that's when I also left Arena during the pandemic period, really. And also with Sweet, we did come up with an album, Isolation Boulevard.
You did.
Basically the hits, basically that we all recorded in our own space. And it was all put together in the studio, which was fun. And also nice to get my voice on the classic songs as well.
And that brings me to what might be my biggest question, which is Brian's shoes are kind of big, right?
Absolutely.
I mean,
completely.
He's not. No one would ever say, "Oh, no, he's a top 50 in the world of vocalists." But that's kind of missing the point, because Sweet are a law unto themselves, and I could say 100 things about them I love. I grew up on them too. Their singles, their pop singles, are off the scale, just incredible. And there's maybe 6, 7, 8 of those. But then when you start digging into the albums, you get a very different Sweet, where they're kind of doing whatever they wanted. Well, they were a rock band.
Exactly. I mean, well, Andy said he always wanted to be a rock band. And of course, when Mike Chapman and Nicky Chin were writing those pop songs, and they were in that sort of era, well, obviously the 70s, it was going so well, they had to go with it. And of course, the record company wanted Chin and Chapman to write the songs for Sweet. So they sort of had to go with it. And that was what they called really, a lot of it, the bubblegum pop.
Yep.
Although you still got Fox on the Run, fantastic song,
Talking of Fox, the album version is heavy as hell.
Yes.
On Desolation Boulevard, that is so heavy and gritty and grimy, compared to the single re-record.
Yeah, and
it's unbelievable.
Listen to Brian's voice on that. I think you realise, Brian had a really good rock voice. It was gritty. It wasn't just pop. It was rocky as well and gritty. So he would have been a great rock singer if he was still alive today. I really think so. Obviously, he had his problems with his voice and the accident that happened and etc. But who knows what could have happened if things were different.
Did you ever see the? I don't know what it's called. The documentary, the Brian Connolly. I don't think it's a Sweet documentary. I think it's a documentary about Brian, and it follows him, and he's doing stints at Butlins.
I don't think I've seen that. I've seen a lot of interviews with him.
I'm pretty sure it's on YouTube somewhere, but it's not nice to see that kind of thing at all.
I know.
But going back, how did you ever have to cope with? Did you ever have to check yourself and go, "Wow, I'm replacing"? Well, you weren't replacing Brian, obviously. You're replacing some other guy. But that's top tier. Did you ever check yourself and go, "What am I doing, and how have I ended up here?" And did it ever play with your head, or were you just pro about it, just get on with it?
It would come in sometimes. Definitely, it would come in. Not necessarily when I was performing, but sometimes after a show, and sometimes before a show in a dressing room, thinking of what I'm doing and going out there as Sweet. And but also remember that when I went in to help them out with the Australian tour, which we toured all over Australia with it, fantastic experience for me. I wasn't doing Brian Connolly's part then. So although it was amazing being in Sweet, it wasn't quite the same as actually being at the front doing what Brian used to do. And so it wouldn't have been such a massive effect on me, an impact, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
Although I still think now it's, I could never, ever have predicted when I was in my 20s that I would be doing what I'm doing.
It's weird, isn't it? It's a weird thought.
It's completely weird. When I think with my school friend on our 113 bus on the way back from Edgware School back to our homes in Mill Hill, we'd be singing Sweet songs on the bus, And even he rings me up sometimes and says, "I still can't believe it, man, you're singing these songs on the bus on the way back from school, but you're actually doing it for real on stage." And I went, "Believe me, I know it's surreal. I'm always thankful for even being able to be on stage anyway, to be able to do this. But But to do this in a band that inspired me and grew up with, absolutely fantastic. But I have to add actually one thing while we're talking about this, especially about Brian. I have really worked very hard to sing the songs as much as I can with the phrasing that Brian used and everything.
And that's not easy.
No, it's not. And because obviously vocally I can, I can go off and do a whole Dio set if I want and sing Ronnie James all night. And I could have done that a little bit with the sweet songs and some of the other sweet songs that are coming in as well, but it wouldn't be the same and it wouldn't feel right. And Andy and I agreed that I should stick as much as I can to the way it was sung when it was the original lineup with Brian. And you know what? I'm totally happy to do it because it sounds right, it feels right, and I enjoy doing it like that. So very happy.
In that period when you were playing guitar, in that first period, how can I put this? Really simply, when you listen to Sweet, some of those songs are really freaking complicated.
Oh, tell me about it.
Jesus wept. For what people tend to brush off as a 70s glam band, wham bam, thank you, ma'am. Some of the songs are really complex.
Absolutely. No, they really are. And the timings and just getting things right, definitely. And as you said before, there's that prog rock element in it, as well as the pop and as well as the rock. I mean, one of my favourite songs, funny enough, is Lost Angels. I love that song. I really wish we'd do it, but who knows whether we'll ever do it live now. But if you listen to that song with the stop starts and everything, it really is proggy, but it's the hooks and the chorus are so melodic. It's such an amazing song. I love it. Absolutely fantastic. But there's a lot of, the heavy songs as well I absolutely love about Sweet. I love Set Me Free and I love performing that. I almost feel like a proper rock singer doing that. It's almost like a different thing. Like a song from another band that they brought in, but it's not, Of course, one of my all-time favourites is Love Is Like Oxygen.
Mine too.
Amazing.
That extended mix does go on a bit though.
It does, doesn't it? Well, we haven't been doing the middle section actually, fanfare, for a while now. But we used to do that, and I used to have to do that on the keyboard, of course.
Hence my earlier question that you must be quite an instrumentalist.
Well, look, Sean, put it this way. Can you imagine Australia, okay? The first date, everything goes quiet, the spotlight's on me, and I've got to play fanfare. And you can hear nothing. You can hear a pin drop. I tell you, my hands were shaking. And I thought, oh my God, I've just got to concentrate and do this. And I got through it and made a few little boo-boos, but I got through it. And I sort of thought, do you know what? That's when I realised when you're not on your natural instrument and the spotlight's on you, it's just you and you're exposed. That's one of the most terrifying things you could ever do.
It's like someone handing you a mic and go, do quarter of an hour stand-up comedy. Go.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're not used to it, you're not doing it, you could freeze, I suppose in a way that was a good training for me, really, to be able to do something like that on the piano.
That's nuts.
But I absolutely love it, of course.
Thanks, Andy.
Yeah. Thanks for putting me in that position, Andy. But in a way, yes, thanks, Andy, because it's done me a lot of good, really, in my music and my writing.
How are the set lists put together these days? I mean, if I was Andy, I guess I'd load the front and the back with the pop hits, as it were, and then draw. I mean, there's some deep cuts you could never do that would be pointless doing. Yeah, people have turned up for a reason. Yeah,
absolutely. We know that,
but to flesh out the whole set, to what are you playing, an hour and a half?
Yeah, most.
You've got to throw some album stuff in there. So what's going on in the set?
Well, we put in because everything that was actually written in the noughties but we re-recorded them and released it as a single. We included everything in the set. We were putting Defender, the song Defender, in the set as well. And also what hadn't been done before, really, because Pete wasn't really a rock singer as such. They weren't really doing it Set Me Free. And if they were doing it, Tony would sing it, because Tony O'Hora was really more of the rock singer. So we were putting in a lot of the rock stuff, everything, Defender, but still keeping the hits. So as you can imagine, you can't, because there's so many hits, there's not much more to put in.
No.
To fill out the time. So,
I mean, I could name 10 off the top of my head. It's not even a thought process.
But the only thing I will say is what was dropped really before I went in as permanently was Coco, Papa Joe, Funny Funny.
Good choice.
Songs. Really, because they didn't really fit the set anymore. They were too dissimilar to the rest of it.
Yeah.
You can't do rock and then, suddenly you're Coco and stuff.
Well, Little Willie and Coco just don't. They're kind of like they didn't date as well. That's all as the others.
The only thing I will say with Little Willie, as it's done back to back with Wigwam Bam, is it's got those guitars in it, which makes them very good to put together. Without those guitars, it would be too bubblegum pop.
Yeah.
It's got a little bit of rock. And I remember actually Andy saying that when they played the Sweden Rock Festival, this was before I joined, they were trying to make all their set heavy and everything like this. And all they could hear at the front was people shouting out, Little Willie, Little Willie. And Andy thought, no, they're obviously, I don't know what they're saying, that maybe it's not the song they're trying to say. Anyway, later on, he sort of turned around to the other guys and went, you know what? Let's just do Wigwam Bam and Little Willie and see what happens. They did it, and the whole place went absolutely nuts. So it just goes to show you, doesn't it, really?
Yeah.
You can sing that to a whole major rock and metal crowd, and they'll jump up and down and love it.
Nuts, right? Germany is a good place for you. Australia is obviously a good place for you. Is it like that all over the world?
Well,
I guess it never clicked the first time round in the States, did it?
No, but I don't know if you know, but there was that sort of
oh yeah, of course,
unwritten agreement between Steve Priest and Andy.
That other thing going on. Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Of when obviously Sweet split in the 80s, Steve Priest wanted to have his own area because he'd moved to LA and was setting up home there. And, he said, well, look, if I want to do Sweet, or what I want to call Sweet here, I don't want you coming over doing Sweet. So they made that sort of unwritten agreement, really, that Andy would sort of be responsible for the UK and Europe, which, funnily enough, included Australia.
Handy.
Steve Priest was quite happy with the States. And really, because of that, it's a shame, because then, there's been no opportunity really to go over to the States for so long now. I mean, I did actually mention it after the passing of Steve Priest. What's the possibility of, touring the States? But I think it's very unsure still at the moment. And I don't know if it will happen.
Yeah, I don't know if that other band is continuing, or if they're even able to.
Shows, and to be quite honest with you, they've been a bit naughty, really, from what I've seen, going out as Sweet.
Yeah,
obviously they can't be. And I think the odd time our picture has been used promoting their show over there. It might not be them doing it; it might be the promoters, but really something should have been done about that. But at the end of the day, that's not my thing to get involved with.
No. I understand.
But for other countries, of course, Germany really is the biggest market, I would say, for Sweet.
What's it like here?
Look,
Weird.
It's not good. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to do a tour every year.
Yeah.
Christmas tour. But you know what? I don't think any country will be as big fan-wise as Germany. Sweet just did so well in Germany that's where, most of the shows and the festivals that we do end up being, Then Denmark as well, Sweden as well, but not in the same way as Germany. Germany really is the biggest market.
Bigger than they were the first time round, no doubt.
Yeah.
Probably.
I think it's got that way, yeah. Yeah.
Germans are strange with their music, aren't they?
They are, but they are very passionate, and this is another reason they really are very nostalgic. You really do have to play the old songs there.
Yeah.
Another reason why you can't really change the set very much. It's too risky. And there have been certain times where certain songs Andy thinks it's too risky to put in Germany, but maybe over here we can do it, But I'm hoping we'll change the setup up a little bit this year, especially towards the tour at the end of the year. Of course, I can't let on anything.
No, but I did see that you're playing Wrexham, aren't you?
Yes.
Which is my hometown and Andy's, I believe.
Absolutely. Are you going to be there?
I'm going to go home and see my mum and make an arrangement to be there.
Absolutely.
I got to come, right? I got to come. We've got to have a beer.
You've got to come. Let's have a beer, definitely.
That'll be fun. No, it's good stuff. It's strange. Not as strange as you being the singer in the suite, but it's just odd. Like that it's still going and it's legit.
Absolutely. And I have to say that, a lot of those songs really are timeless. You can play them again and again, and it doesn't seem tired. They just don't seem tired. They're amazing songs, amazingly written songs.
Because a lot of the bands from back then got tired quickly, and I think that's where it all comes back around to. The Sweet were legit. They were a rock band, and there's no way out of that, because you can tell in the timeline as it goes on. Bands that aren't rock bands don't last in the same way. They don't. No,
absolutely. Especially when you're going through the 80s. A lot of the bands that weren't playing the rock, that maybe have had one massive hit and that then sort of disappeared,
And then you have to tour with 13 other bands to make up the set, because people only want to hear 2 songs.
Exactly. That's the great thing. Another great thing about Sweet is just having so many hits. Not 1, not 2, not 3, but lots.
There's at least 12.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And if they're not hits, people know them. Things I don't know if Action was a big hit, but everyone knows it.
Well, everyone knows it, and it's been covered as well by a lot of time, including Def Leppard. Yeah, it's people like that song. They've used it a lot. So, Sweet did influence a lot of bands. Even Kiss were influenced by Sweet a lot.
Well, I am I'm one of those big Kiss fan people. But you can tell Sweet and Slade are at the core of where that started. There's so much stolen from it. Definitely. Thank you very much for this.
Nice one. Thank you very much.
I have to let you get back to
the wife.
Yeah. Say hi for me.
I will do indeed.
See you later. Cheers, Paul.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
Bye.